evening, everybody. My name is Clyde Prayer. I'm from the East Flatters Community Partnership, Community Ambassador. I would like to thank everybody, each and every one of you for being here today. I know it's raining. I know this week's probably been rough, but thank you for reaching out, thank you for getting here. I appreciate it. I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Isaiah. He is a voting rights coordinator from the Law Center, Law and Social Justice.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? My fault, I'm gonna work my way up here real quick just so I can get on the slides for you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Kai, appreciate you. So yes, y'all, once again, my name is Isaiah Fenichel. I am the Voting Rights Coordinator for the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar Evers College. And we're gonna have a quick conversation. I appreciate y'all for having me tonight. We're gonna have a conversation just about civic engagement, right? Like y'all heard a lot of us talking about the elections, all of the things that have been going on in the city, redistricting, all of that. I think parts of this district have had like 4 different elections this year between primaries, special elections, general elections, all of that. So we're gonna talk about what that actually means and the roles that we are filling with these people. So to start off, just to give you a little bit of background about who I am, the work that we do at the center. My name is Isaiah. The Center for Law and Social Justice was founded in 1986, initially to combat police brutality and violence against Black communities here in New York City. We came together, a group of activists, attorneys, organizers, clergy members, everybody came together with the need for us to find ways to use the law in order to promote social justice and racial justice specifically. Basically, we vision a politically educated and civically engaged Black electorate that uses political power to marshal the representation and resources we need for our communities to thrive. Lots of words, right? Had to take some time to practice that. But what that really means is we are an organization first that is for the people and by the people. Those people specifically, and this is not to denigrate anybody else or put anybody else out, but we work specifically on behalf of communities of African descent. We say communities of African descent to highlight the fact that there is different experiences across the African diaspora, right? So some people get offended, you say Black, some people say otherwise, whatever it may be. We view communities of African descent. If your people came from the shores of Africa, wound up on this side of the world, you're one of us. So very simple, and what we work for is essentially building Black power, right? And some of y'all might bristle when I say that, right? But we're talking about political power. We're talking about the ways that we need to be active and involved in our communities on behalf of our communities to bring about the change that we want to see. So part of that work is the Our Future, Our Vote campaign. In this campaign, we basically are targeting Black and brown youth, specifically ages 17 to 35, to not only get out to vote, but to start organizations, to get involved, to really double down on civic engagement, because we believe that as youth, we'll be dealing with the effects of these elections and decisions going forward to the future, right? So it's our duty to make our voices heard and to help build that future, using our vote and using all the tools in our belt. Y'all not here to hear about my campaign, though. So, that being said, I'm gonna dive into the conversation a little bit. It might be a little bit boring for this first few parts, but bear with me. You know, I really want this conversation to be interactive, informative, and help you guys, really, because that's the goal. It's not for me to be talking and showing out how much I know about the system, but to really give you guys the tools to make the changes you need, right? So the 3 questions I want y'all to remember while I'm going through this presentation, while I'm having this discussion. Number 1, what's the most important issue that you think is affecting your community? So I know you guys have this survey going around. We also have a survey, we have a lot of different things. All these organizations here are focused on meeting your needs. The problem is, it's a lot of needs. So keep in mind what the most important one is to you. Also, keep in mind, do y'all think voting is an effective tool for change, right? And Also, did you vote in this year's election or any of the elections this year? Now, while I'm saying this, I want y'all to know my title is Voting Rights Coordinator. I don't care if y'all didn't vote. I'm not gonna be offended, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. I'm not here for conversion. If you think voting doesn't change anything, that's fine. I understand why you would say that. So I'm not here to change your mind, but I am here to provide y'all with some information so you understand the choices that you're making and the choices being made on your behalf. So I want y'all to keep those in mind while I'm moving through this conversation. So real quick, we're gonna take it back to the basics, right? I'm not here to just say, oh, these are what the jobs are, this is what it is. You guys need to know how the system works in order to understand how things operate within it, right? So there's two terms that are on the TV right here. The first is separation of powers. So like, show of hands, has anybody heard this term before, separation of powers?
Yeah.
And, okay, so you said yes, so now I gotta call you out. Can you, real quick, just sum up what separation of powers is?
Well, we have the intellectual community, and then we have the not so intellectual. So right we will have a conflict of understanding. And to me, language and understanding is power. And then we have the economy, where we have the diversity, especially in a state like this, where we have the multi-trillionaire, millionaire, and all the way down to the not so functional financial. So to me, those powers are important because without the language of understanding the spectrum of what drives your community, the language has to be understood. So the first pivotal point is communication. That's one of the great building blocks of any community. Understanding is key. Because without knowledge, you could just be ignorant.
Absolutely. So that's a great answer. It's not the one I was looking for, but that's a fantastic answer. Do either of you ladies want to take a stab at it?
So separation of power means legislative, judicial, and executive, which is the presidential office.
Perfect. Exactly. So while my man's point makes 100% of sense, there is the actual idea of where power lies in our communities, the different factors in the power, those are separate and different things, and they absolutely play a role. For the purpose of this conversation, though, we're going to talk about separation of powers as the concept in government. So what you just said is exactly right. The three co-equal branches of government. For those of y'all remember those social studies classes, civics classes, whatever it was. If you don't, let this be some new information. But we have three co-equal branches of government, right? After the Revolutionary War, we had a king, Boston Tea Party, a bunch of people dressed up like Native Americans, threw tea into the ocean, and then we started a whole war, built a country afterwards, right? That's how the story goes at least. That being said, coming out of that, we did not want to repeat. We didn't want a monarchy. We didn't want a king who makes all of the decisions for us on a whim based on how he wakes up feeling that day. So we came up with this idea of separation of powers, where you have the legislative branch who writes laws, you have the executive branch who enforces the laws, and then you have the judicial branch that interprets those laws. So for tonight's conversation, we're not going to focus too much on the judicial branch, even though that is a very important branch. It just operates so differently from everything else that it's going to be a little bit different of a conversation. But we can definitely, if y'all got questions, feel free to throw them up. But the executive and legislative branch, these are the people who write the laws and enforce the laws. So we're going to talk a lot about them today, because those are the people who represent you directly and are supposed to be working on behalf of your interests. So usually I'll play a video, but we got to do it pretty quickly, right? So just show of hands, are there any questions about separation of powers, any of that, right? None? Cool. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and play a video to explain this next thing. But before I do that, does anybody want to take a stab at what federalism is? Got you. Okay, so no worries. That's what the video is for. I got you right now. So really quick, this is about a 5-minute video. We're just going to play it real quick to give you guys a little bit of understanding about a different type of separation of powers, right? Like different, but very much relevant. So without further ado, we can go ahead and play this.
Having a government is important in order to keep people safe and protected. Consider this scenario. You're on the bus headed to school, but roads are in poor condition, and there are no lanes, speed limits, stop signs, or traffic lights. The roads would be chaotic, and you probably wouldn't feel safe. In its basic form, government is people coming together to organize a set of rules that we can agree to and abide by. It puts the symbol in civilization. The framers of the U.S. Constitution
Or we're not. Okay, there we go. It's all right, we moved anyway.
create a system that divided power between the government of the U.S.
All right, let's let it play one more time.
The national government has certain powers defined by the U.S. Constitution that states do not have, such as the powers to declare war, coin money, and regulate international trade. Other powers belong exclusively to the states. These reserved powers include conducting elections, issuing marriage and driver's licenses, ratifying amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and establishing local governments for cities and counties. There are also shared powers between state and federal governments, including the power to collect taxes, maintain law and order, and build highways. And the layers don't stop there. Government powers extend to cities and counties within a state. In Georgia, there are 159 counties and over 530 cities, also known as municipalities within these counties. Counties serve several purposes, such as providing courts of law, holding elections, building and repairing county roads, and providing services like police and fire protection, libraries, schools, and public transportation. Within those counties are cities, which vary in power. Generally, a city holds the power to maintain law enforcement, collect taxes, and provide water and trash services. These local forms of government are important because they have a more direct interest in what's going on in their immediate community. If you've been counting, that's a total of 4 territorial divisions of government. So, how do they apply to the citizens of the United States? Imagine the tiered levels of government as a Russian nesting doll, with you in the center as the smallest doll. The second smallest doll is city government, and all the laws in that city apply to you. The county level government falls over the city government and you. All the laws and regulations set forth by the county apply to the city and to you. But the city laws don't necessarily apply to the entire county because there can be multiple cities within a county. The state government doll covers all of the counties, cities, and people in the state. A law passed at state level cannot be overridden by a local government. Finally, you have the largest doll, the federal government. The federal government reigns supreme, literally. Article 6, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution is the Supremacy Clause, which establishes that federal laws are the supreme law of the land. This means that national laws take priority over any conflicting state laws. Say, for example, Georgia wanted to pass a law making the voting age 21 years and older. This would be unconstitutional because it violates the 26th Amendment that states all citizens in the United States who are 18 years or older cannot be denied the right to vote based on their age. Although the federal government may pass laws that apply to all states, cities, and people, its power is limited by the U.S. Constitution. In fact, the 10th Amendment, the last entry in the Bill of Rights, was created in order to restrict the range of power exercised by the federal government. The 10th Amendment states that any power not listed in the U.S. Constitution is reserved for the states or the people. Another way to illustrate these divisions of power is to think about it in this way. Classroom rules may differ from one teacher to another. One teacher may allow free seating, while another provides assigned seating. But the school rules, like dress codes and bell schedules, apply to all classrooms. And the school district's code of conduct applies to all students in every school in the district. That means pulling the fire alarm or intentionally blocking school traffic are offenses in any classroom in any school in the district. Just like government, these rules are intended to keep people safe. Now that you know how the United States separates governments responsible for lawmaking, can you think of any other examples of division of power?
So that was a little bit long-winded way. So if there's any questions, feel free to throw them up. I can answer them. But when we're talking about federalism, let me just go back to the presentation. When we're talking about federalism, right, this is the different levels of government. So it's very important to know that, right? Because so a lot of times we get caught up. So question, actually, this is a real good indicator. How often do elections happen? Feel free, anybody in here. How often do you go vote? Every 2 years? Every year? Okay, so y'all are close, so you're right. Every year, just about every year there's an election. In fact, in New York City, we have elections every year until 2028 right now. So the reason for that is because there are different levels of government, right? So this past year, just last week, we had election day. We voted on our state executives. So when we're talking about the different branches, that's the state level executive branch. So the reason why we start here to have this conversation is so everybody can understand, right? Sometimes when you want to make change happen, you gotta know who you're talking to, which person you're talking to, and the right lever to pull. Sometimes you may be talking to your congressperson about, man, they don't ever fix the potholes in front of my street, you gotta do this. Congress doesn't handle that, that's not their problem. So you may be talking to the person making your voice heard, but it's not being received by the people who need to receive it. So that's why we start the conversation here. So feel free, if y'all got questions about the level of government, we can do that. This part's a little bit more interactive. So we're gonna see which officials y'all know, which ones you don't know. I'm gonna tell you about their jobs and all of that. But to give you some incentive, right, I have about 10 pins here, there's 10 names. If you can guess, I'm gonna put a picture on the screen, if you could guess either the name of that person, the office that they hold, the branch of government that they're a part of, or which level even, I'll give you one of these pins. It's got a bunch of cool little Black Lives Matter pins. So yeah, definitely could get one. I got a couple on me, you see. But without further ado, feel free, throw your hand up, call it out, whoever gets to it first. Actually, no, put a hand up, because some of y'all gonna know their names. Does anybody know who this person on the screen is? Go ahead. Go ahead, Lamenta, you got it. That's it. So you got a pin. All right, so all the pins, remember who won a pin, I'll give them out afterwards, y'all get them, and then there we go. But, you know, I don't want to have everybody having a run up here. But that's correct, so that's Mayor Eric Adams, he's the mayor of New York City. Anybody know who this person is? My man, you got that. Yes, so this is the comptroller, this is Brad Lander, he's also the comptroller for New York City. We're just gonna talk about local for this, people who represent this area. We also have a comptroller at the state level, governor, all that, we're not talking about that here. So that's a little bit of a hint going forward. Does anybody know who this is? Ooh, you got it. Nah, you got it. You're right, it's public advocate Jumaane Williams, absolutely. And he is the public advocate right here in New York City. Continuing on, does anybody know who this is? Oh, she got y'all over here. Antonio Reynoso. So this is the Brooklyn Borough President. So he handles operations within here in Brooklyn. I'll talk a little bit more about all of these roles and what they do going forward. Does anybody know who this is? Going for two? Yup, you're right. So this is the district attorney, Eric Gonzalez from Brooklyn. So again, there's 5 district attorneys. I'm gonna talk about all these roles as we go forward, but want to see what y'all know coming into. Does anybody know who this is? My man, you got a pin, there we go. So yes, this is Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. She represents Congressional District 9 that covers this area right here. So this is our representative to federal government. This is the only person at the federal level that is representing this area in terms of national politics, passing national laws. If y'all care about something happening across the country, this is who you talk to. Not gonna talk too much about her today, just because again, we're gonna talk local. We're gonna take it to the home team. Does anybody know who this person is? You got two, I'm not calling on you. Does anybody know who this person is? Alright, now you got two. No more for you. There you go. So yes, this is State Senator Kevin Parker. He represents Senate District 21, covering this area. I appreciate y'all joining in on this. Does anybody know who this is? If you got two, don't call out. Oh, I can't hear you. There you go. Absolutely. So this is Assembly Member Ranice Bashat. Can't pronounce her last name, so I'm not going to try out of just, not trying to violate. But she represents us in the State Assembly for part of this district. So Flatbush actually has 3 different assembly members. I ran out of space on it, so we don't got everybody, I want to get everybody in. But, so she represents one part of Flatbush. Does anybody know who this person is? Ooh, this is a challenge. If you know, going for 2? Oh, she got it, that's it. So this is the newly elected Assembly Member Brian Cunningham, who represents Assembly District 43. So that covers another part of Flatbush and Lefford Gardens, all of that. Does anybody know who this is? Oh? Okay. Okay. What level of government is she? There we go. So yes, this is Councilwoman Rita Joseph. So this is the representative for, or one of the representatives for Flatbush on the City Council. So this, how you would talk to Yvette Clark about things going on across the country. This is who you talk to about things going on across the city. So again, just remembering this conversation, separation of powers, the levels of government. That's why this is important, because everybody on this row does the same job just about, but in different levels and different places. So it's different conversations you have with them. So I appreciate y'all. Go ahead, you got a question? So yeah, Brian Cunningham is the State Assembly member, so he represents us in the State Assembly up in Albany. So that's for District 43. But I'll talk a little bit more about their roles and what they do in a couple minutes. I got you. No worries. I won't let you leave without that info. But going down, right? So we just had election day. We voted for state offices. So our governors, lieutenant governors, comptrollers, attorney generals, state justices, state assembly members, senators. So we're going to start at the state level, but really the important part I want to talk about tonight is local. Go ahead.
They vote for the judges.
Absolutely, you did vote for the judges. Was there more to the question?
No, I'm just telling you.
Absolutely, you're right. I appreciate you. So yeah, for tonight's conversation, like I said, we're not going to talk too much about the judges just because that's a whole different apparatus to explain. And to be honest, I didn't go to law school, so I'm going to let a lawyer come in and explain that. That being said, so right, we're going to talk about the executive branch first. So this is the state level executive branch. When we're talking about separation of powers, federalism, all of that, we're going to start at the top on the state level. So the first office we're going to talk about is the office of governor, also lieutenant governor. I don't have their name. I don't have too much about the lieutenant governor because, truth be told, y'all, they don't really do much. Just in terms, it's like the vice president. What the vice president do? They wait for the president to pass up. That's what it is. They oversee the Senate, cast the tie-breaking vote. But that being said, a lot of their roles that they can assume to be doing is the roles of the governor. They offer support to them. So we're going to start with the governor. That's the chief executive. That's the big boss. That's the person, CEO of state government. They get to serve 4 years in office. So again, every executive office tends to serve 4 years. This is just, actually the reason for this is a little bit political sciencey, but I'll give you a little insight on it. The reason that you serve 4 years is because in Congress and legislative offices, it's a 2-year term for a legislative session. What a legislative session is right, you gotta get a bill passed in time for the legislative session to end. So you have 2 years from the start of the session to the end. The reason the executive branch has 4 years is because they get 2 legislative sessions. So 2 rounds of bills being passed and voted on and debated on, the executive gets to sign or veto those bills. And when we're saying veto, this means that the governor gets to say, well, let's say we passed a law that says we're banning chicken tenders, right? Nobody gets to eat chicken tenders ever again. Not good. Goes to the governor's desk. She's like, what y'all talking about? I love chicken tenders, right? This is how you gonna have no chicken tenders? I'm not signing that bill. Vetoed it, right? So that's a silly example, but that's exactly how vetoing works, right? The governor gets the final say. That's the executive. They get to sign off on the bills that go into office. They also get to set the state budget. So if she said, not only am I gonna veto this bill for chicken tenders, we gonna say, well, you know, the state will put like $5 billion to the side so we can make sure that we have enough chicken tenders to go around for everybody, right? The governor gets to set that. It gets voted on later on by the government or by the legislative branch. But we'll come back to that. And they also have, this is one of the most important powers of the governor of any executive, and we're gonna say it a few times, but the power of appointment. As the governor, you get to appoint the head of 95 different state agencies. That's the Department of Education, Department of Health, Motor Vehicles, Transportation, all of that gets determined by who sits in the governor's seat, gets to appoint them to those seats. It has to be confirmed by your representatives, but those names that go forward are from the governor's office. The other important thing that governors can do, they have the power to pardon and commute sentences. So if you have been incarcerated, you're arrested right now, say I messed up in my youth, right? I did something and got arrested, went to prison. I can write to the governor, petition the governor for a pardon to say, Governor, listen, I don't deserve this punishment. I don't deserve to be treated like a criminal. Please pardon me. And the governor has the ability to say, you know what? We're wiping away your slate. No more record, no more nothing. Completely pardoned. She also has the ability to say, well, Isaiah, you served 15 years, but you don't seem like the same person you were when you came in. We're going to commute your sentence and say, instead of the 15 years that you're serving, you only got to serve 5. All of that is decided by one person, and the pardons, commutations, that's not checked at all. That's completely left to the governor. That's her, him, whoever's decision at the time. So that's the governor, and feel free, I'm gonna just keep going through it, but if y'all have questions, again, throw them up. The next person is the Attorney General. So this is the Chief Legal Officer for the state. Again, 4-year terms, and what their job is, they guard and protect our rights. So, right, when I'm talking about a criminal case, right, for those of y'all that may know, for whatever reason you may know, if you get charged with a crime, a felony in the state of New York, right, when you go to court, it's the people versus the state of New York, or versus so-and-so, the people versus Isaiah. The people is always represented by the prosecutor. On the state level, that person will always be the Attorney General. So an example right now, y'all, like, not to get political with it, the ongoing criminal case dealing with the former president. That's being brought about by Letitia James. So that is Letitia James acting on behalf of the people of New York to investigate and prosecute former President Donald Trump and the Trump Organization, right? That's left completely to the Attorney General, and that's also voted on in elections, right? So she just got reelected last week. Alternatively, right, had she lost, whoever is the new Attorney General can come in and decide whether or not they want to continue these cases on behalf of the people. So again, that's what the Attorney General does. They also provide legal counsel to the executive branch, so they provide legal advice and legal support to the other executives as well to make sure that, you know, the state's interests are properly represented and defended. And lastly, they get to oversee all the criminal task force. So, what is it? The organized crime task force, so dealing with gangs and the mafia and other things like that, right? That's the Attorney General's over in charge of that. Also, the Medicaid fraud task force, which, if you don't know, is one of the biggest issues in New York. I think it's at something about $218 billion annually or something from Medicaid. Go ahead.
The city also handles the COVID money that was given out, should have gotten.
So I think for the state level COVID money, possibly, but for the federal money, no. I don't think that falls into her purview. But I'm not 100%, so I don't want to give y'all bad information. But that would ideally be something that comes across her desk to, figure out what she's going to do.
Question.
Go ahead.
Does Burton Gardens, does a local input if it's regarding immigration cases or
So for an immigration case, that actually bumps it up to federal, if I'm not mistaken. It gets a little hazy, so New York is a sanctuary state and things like that. So we have some different leniencies and things that we do in terms of our legal system, but no, she can't pardon you for an immigration offense, only for state offenses.
So you have a right to the president or something like that?
Mouth locking.
I have a right to the president then?
I don't know about the president, probably Yvette Clarke, your congresswoman, your federal representative, Senator Schumer as well, going to the department head, so contacting the Department of Justice, ICE, all of those people, that's who you would contact because those are the government entities. Whether or not it moves swiftly from there is a different conversation. But that's at the federal level. Any other questions? So, last but not least, actually one of the most important for the state executive branch, the comptroller. This is the person that handles all the money. I don't know about y'all, I love my money, it's important, it matters. I don't know about y'all, it matters how every time my paycheck comes, excuse me, church, my paycheck. But I'm very upset every time my paycheck comes, right? And there's all this money taken out for taxes. The comptroller for state taxes, that's who decides how much tax money is collected and how appropriately it's been spent, right? That's left to the comptroller. They enforce the effective use of state and local tax dollars. They also have the ability to review state contracts and to conduct audits and to make sure that the money that has been spent has been used effectively and in the right ways. So that's another position we vote on. The person who gets to determine whether or not the money that they take from us is actually used to benefit our lives. So these are the three major positions in the state executive branch. Again, you have all the deputies and departments and all of that, but this is the state executive branch. Before I click to the next slide, any other questions about the executives? Cool. So moving on, right? The next one. We're going to talk about this is to your question about the state senators and the state representatives. So in the state legislature, we're going to start. It's a two-house legislature, what's called a bicameral legislature. It's a fancy word to say there's two houses, there's two parts of it. The first part, the upper house, is the state senate. The reason it's called the upper house is because they have a slight distinction and a little bit more power than the assembly members. But I'll talk about that. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So in the state senate, there's 63 members, each representing a different district across New York State. 63 different districts as it is right now. That number can change, but for the purpose of the conversation right now, it's 63. They serve 2-year terms, again, one legislative session. They go for 2 years and then we vote on them again. And when they're there, when they're in office, these are who introduce, debate, and vote on laws, whether or not we want things to get passed. So back to the chicken tender ban, right? Back to this chicken tender ban. That would go into both houses, right? So one bill would come up in the state assembly, one bill would come up in the state senate. Both houses have to pass the bill to say, nah, we don't want y'all to have any chicken tenders. So that happens in the state senate. They also get to approve the budget, and spending levels. So Governor Hochul will be like, yo, I want to give $5 billion to chicken tenders, gotta get voted on by the state senate. This is a power that is very important because this is one of the ultimate checks on the governor. So, right, while you may be able to say, oh, we should spend this money this way, you don't get to spend that money without consulting the legislative branch. And the reason for that is that this directly represents the people. This directly represents the local districts and the interests of everybody collectively. As opposed to, well, half this upstate wants it, but it'd be bad for the city, right? Or the city wants it, but it'd be bad for upstate, something like that. That's why it's voted on in the legislature, because that's the people's house, again. And also voting to uphold or override vetoes. So the governor may veto it and say, well, we're not doing that. They could vote again and say, well, listen, we got 2/3 of this body that said no chicken tenders for nobody. We don't care about your veto. Get on with it, right? That's what the governor can say, but then it goes to the Senate, right? So the Senate has the power to uphold or override it. And this is the really important part, why it's the distinction, why this is the upper house. This is who votes to confirm the appointments. So State Senator Kevin Parker, right? He has the opportunity to cast a vote for those 95 heads of state departments. So say the governor puts someone forward who, let's see, someone to head the Department of Transportation, but they ain't got no car. They walk everywhere, they don't do nothing, right? That person probably isn't the best person to make decisions regarding transportation. That's Senator Parker's job, to cast a vote that says, well, listen, the people of my district think that this is not the way to represent us. This is not the right person for the job. This is not effective. That's left to the Senate because it's ultimately up to the people. It's not a monarchy. You can't just put whoever you want in different positions. It needs to be voted on by the people. And this representation is for the people in theory. But it only works so much as we make them work for us, right? So I'm gonna keep talking about this, keep going forward. Feel free to throw in any questions. Go into the lower house, the state assembly, 150 members, right? It's over double the size. It's a lot bigger, which means a lot smaller districts. It's more local. It's more in tune with the smaller needs of the community. However, as y'all see, right? They do all of the same things except for confirming governor appointments. That's the only difference, is that's left to the Senate. The state assembly doesn't do that. They're not involved with those proceedings because, again, it's just the way things shake out. Are there any questions about the roles of senators, assembly members?
No, but I have a question.
Go ahead. And before you ask, I already know what you're about to ask. So I ran out of room on the slide, y'all, because there's 3 assembly members that represent Flatbush. The 3rd assembly member is from District 58. That's Monique Chandler Waterman. So actually, to highlight, right? Real quick, how many of y'all tired of hearing about voting? Hearing about voting, talking about voting, right? I don't care, I'll be the first one. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. We had redistricting, we had elections. In this district specifically, right? There's 2 parts of this district. Assembly District 43 and Assembly District 58. Both districts had special elections in March and May of this year. So that's one election. Then you had a primary election in June. It got split because redistricting and all of that. Again, I'm tired of talking about it, so I'm not talking about it. So primary 1, and then you had a second primary in August. Y'all voted 3 times before you got to the general election. Then last week you had election day, and that's when you finally put the people into office to confirm it. So there's 3 representatives that cover Flatbush, depending which part of it you're in. One of these 3 people will be your representative. So that's Ronise Bachut, that's Brian Cunningham, and Monique Chandler Waterman are your 3 assembly members. So realistically, even if it's not your district, they represent Flatbush. You could talk to all 3 of them because they cover this area. Any other questions about state representatives?
In regards to the budget, do both of them have purview over the same type?
So yes and no. So right, technically the governor is the one that sets the budget. What happens is both houses tend to put up their budget. So it'll be one house budget from the state assembly, a budget from the state senate. the two bodies have to find a way to make their budget come together. So if you was up in Albany for caucus week, I don't know how many people are here, but right, they have caucus weekend up there. It was like sometime in April. They still had passed the budget. So all the legislators are going back and forth debating, trying to make sure that the Assembly's budget matches the Senate's budget, that all of these things match up so that we can put one budget forward for the governor and go on and finalize it. So each house tends to create their own, but it's the one budget has to be signed by the governor. So they have to come to one conclusion at the end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Is there a limited time to pass the budget?
Not really. I mean, yes, there is.
So the debate can continue into 1 year?
So this is where, right, when y'all hear things like government shutdown, things like that,
Right.
that's what this is. Because you are trying to pass the budget to make sure there's money to have the government operate. If y'all don't pass the budget, then the government doesn't run. So y'all gotta work until the government runs because otherwise all of us fall short. So that's where it goes from the people up. They can take as long as they want, but if the government's ineffective and we got elections every year, then that means I'm about to vote for you. I'm about to vote you out. What's up?
So if I don't pass my budget, what am I spending?
What do you mean?
If I don't pass the budget, where am I getting funds to spend?
If you don't pass the budget, nothing gets spent. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. If you don't pass the budget, nothing gets spent. So to give it context, right? When I'm talking about taxes and how your taxes go, all that tax money gets collected regardless. They will have that money sitting there. If y'all don't pass if it's not passed and spending levels aren't approved, then that money just sits there waiting to be spent because the government can't operate without that budget.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Got you. Go ahead.
I think what happened is that if they don't pass the budget, it stays where it is, and they can't make no new contract.
Yep.
Okay, so all those guys that work for the city can't get a raise.
Exactly.
Okay? And he's like, no, until they approve the new
Exactly.
budget, and then the city have money to do whatever they want.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So that's a perfect example. If you're a city employee or a state employee and you rely on state funding and the state budget to pay your salary, if the budget doesn't pass, then your check's not getting cut because they can't pay y'all because there's no
You
budget.
don't get an increase.
Exactly. No increase, no nothing. Like that's so exactly. You're exactly right. So yeah, in terms of the budget, that's when it comes. This is a perfect example, actually, of why the power of the people is important, right? So in that situation, y'all would need to be calling all these representatives, calling their office, telling them, like, hey y'all, we're not getting paid, the government's not running, we need you to do this. And that's how you advocate, right? So in the interest of time, I'm gonna speed it up a little bit just so we can get to talking about city government, because that's really important, even more, not more important, but more pressing right now as city council elections are next year. Feel free if y'all wanna circle back with questions or ask me on the side, you can definitely do that though. So, moving on, right? We're gonna talk about elected officials in New York City, right? So this is a statistic, this is something I want y'all to kind of wrap your heads around in New York City, the importance of voting, right? In New York, there's 174 elections and more decided. Just city representatives, people who are representatives, right? So I don't even have the public advocate or comptroller on here. We got 1 mayor, 51 city council members, 5 borough presidents, 5 district attorneys, 67 assembly members of the 150 there, 34 senators of the 63 that go up there, and 12 U.S. representatives that represent New York City in Congress. The last 3, the assembly members, the senators, the representatives, all were on the ballot this year, right? That was who we all came out to vote for. I'm gonna give you all the numbers real quick. In Flatbush, there was over 234,000 voters registered, right? people who are actually registered and on the rolls and were eligible to vote. On election day, about 57,000 people turned out to vote in Flatbush. So what that means is, right, voter turnout was 25%, and it was high. That, like, I want y'all to think about that. It was high for a midterm election. 25%. If it's about 25% of people who actually voted, that means 75% of the people who could vote did not vote. So like I'm saying, when I ask y'all if voting's effective for change of all of these things, it really plays a part, because if you didn't vote, that's any of the 3 Flatbush representatives that fall under the 67, Kevin Parker was on the ballot, Yvette Clark was on the ballot. All of these people are making decisions, and whether or not y'all voted, they get these jobs. Like, it's very easy, right? If we have 3 people in a room, right, and we try to decide who gets pizza, it's a lot easier to decide between 3 people than if we got 5 people. So it's more beneficial to have less people voting, because it's easier to change the minds of people. But feel free, you got a question?
Just a quick comment. I read in a paper that one of our state assembly members had 213 votes in order to get into office.
I think in the special election, I think you're not wrong about that. It was a very, very low number. For context, the primary elections, June and August, those elections, we had about 10% voter turnout. So to give y'all context, like I said, 25% is high. To nominate the people whose names go on the ballot, only 1 out of every 10 people showed up to vote for that election. That's how important. There's a district in the Bronx, they elected a new state assembly representative. The difference in the primary election between the old one and the new one seeking the nomination, 533 votes. Y'all know how many people were eligible to vote in this district?
3,000.
130,000 people. 25,000 people came out to vote. 110,000 people who could have voted did not vote. And as a result, the election was decided by 513 votes. That's why voting matters. That's why it's important. But again, I'm gonna keep it going just so you guys can understand what these roles do, right? So just to breeze through it, this is the executive branch. We have the chief executive, the mayor, that's Mayor Adams. We have 4-year terms. They sign veto laws, they propose the budget, and they appoint people at the city level. So again, when we're talking about the governor, it's very similar roles, it's very similar things that everybody that they do, but this is at the city level. So where there's 95 agencies across the state, there's 50 in the city. The NYPD, ACS, Department of Education, Department of Health. Half of these organizations in here, the heads of the organizations are appointed by the mayor's office. That is a very powerful position. It's confirmed by the council. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in a second. But the next important role to talk about, arguably one of the more important, and let's talk about the public advocate. The public advocate's office is solely to work for the people. So they conduct oversight over other branches of government. So all the agencies, to make sure those agencies are actually doing what they need to be doing, making sure they're doing things effectively. If y'all got complaints, those complaints go to the public advocate's office, and the public advocate takes that, goes forward, and speaks on behalf of the community. They also get to appoint people to the committees and boards that also do the work of overseeing and making sure government is running appropriately. And if the mayor can't finish their term, they become the mayor. So unlike a little bit of shade I threw to the lieutenant governor or vice president, this person actually is second in command, and they do things in their office. They have an actual role that is to work on behalf of the people. So it's a very important role. Also, we got the comptroller's office. Again, the money, follow the money, y'all. This is the important people. This is who decides, to your point about city contracts and all of that, this is who is in charge of that. So again, if things aren't going right, if you ain't getting the raises, if you're not getting the money that you need to do, forget the councilman, forget all of that. Write this man, and your councilman, and everybody else. But this, if you get your check signed, it's signed by Brad Landon. If you,
He has nothing to do with my contract.
he signs the checks.
No, my union is into my contract,
Yeah.
not him.
You want a city contract, right? The union signed a contract with the city?
Yeah,
That's him.
but I gotta fight my union.
You gotta fight your union, and your union gotta fight with him.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You as a citizen though, as a citizen living in New York, outside your union and not, everybody in this room, if we want to gang up on somebody to make sure you getting your money, we can call the comptroller's office. Go ahead.
Who takes care of land and like landlords?
Landlords, so that is landlords or laws? So I believe that would go more towards the public advocate's office, right? Because they deal with all of the city agencies that deal with housing, that deal with all of the funding, all the resources that are accessed. That goes through the public advocate's office because they're the ones that are in charge of making sure you get the resources and making sure that your needs are met directly if the other branches aren't doing their work. So that would go more towards the public advocate's office, also your council member, because they write the actual laws and can do it that way. Or your borough president. So thank you for the segue, because we're going to jump to the next one. So also in this city government, if you remember in the video, right, she said there's federal, state, and then you get the counties, right? And then you can have a county that has multiple cities in it. New York City is very different because New York City got multiple counties in it. So we got Kings County, Richmond County, Bronx County, Manhattan County, all of that. So each county has a borough president, a county executive borough president. Roles are similar. This is the chief executive of the borough, right? And while they don't sign bills into law, they make recommendations for the budget. They also appoint borough representatives. So people sitting on the community board, some are appointed by your borough president. People who sit on other boards and other things like that, appointed by the borough president's office. And the borough president is charged with holding public hearings. So when we're talking about redistricting, right? Each borough president hosted a redistricting hearing where y'all can come out and talk about what is the specific needs of your community. That's the job of the borough president. His job, where the mayor got to advocate for all of New York City, Antonio Reynoso, he's for Brooklyn. That's it. He only focuses on the Brooklyn, and yeah, you may consider other districts, but your service is dedicated to your borough. Also in the same vein, right, the district attorney. This one, even a little bit more so, right, I think personally this is a little anecdotal. More so than the attorney general, the district attorney is beyond important. So if you see on here, right, they're the chief prosecutor. Like I said, the people versus Isaiah. For 4 years, this person gets to decide whether to conduct a whether or not to conduct a grand jury investigation. For those that may not know, who don't watch enough Law and Order, right? A grand jury investigation is to decide whether or not there's enough evidence to charge someone with a crime. He gets to decide, A, if that investigation happens, and when it happens, he gets to have all the people come in and talk to them and tell the story without any other lawyers present. That's left to this office. Then, after they have that conversation, he also has the ability to decide whether or not they will charge people with a crime. That's left solely to him. That's called prosecutorial discretion. They get to decide. It's up to them. It's their choice. And then finally, even after they charge you, they got enough evidence, right? Now, I'm gonna try to talk about this in a non-partisan way, in a non-messed up way, but I get a little passionate about this. Say you are somebody who may have a drug problem. If you get arrested, right, with however much drugs in your pocket, enough that they can charge you with a serious crime, right? The district attorney can say, well, we're gonna charge you, but we gotta take it to court. When we take it to court, it could take months and months, years and years, and this whole time you gotta sit in Rikers Island. While that's going on, if you go to court and lose your trial, you could be facing 15 years in prison. What the district attorney has the ability to do is come and say, well, I know Rikers is trash. You don't really want to be here. I know it's going to take forever for this court case. We don't know how long you're going to be in here. And if you go to court and lose, you're going to serve 15 years. So let me cut you a deal. I'm going to give you 5 years. You just say, I'm guilty of the crime. You don't have to go to court, nothing. And then you sign that deal because you don't want 15 years. That's all left to the district attorney's office to decide. How long you get, what deals are offered, who's charged, all of this comes from one person, from just the district attorney. You got a question?
Yeah, so if my lawyer and the defense strike a deal before it gets there, that deal is not ready to stand it.
What do you mean?
In other words, if they say, if I go to court for the crime, and my lawyer and the prosecutor strike a deal to say, hey, X, Y amount of years, take the deal.
So a defense attorney, your lawyer, is obligated to tell you that there was a deal offered. Regardless if the DA says like, hey, you're facing 15, but I can give you 5 years, the DA or your defense attorney has to come to you and say, well, listen, he offered this deal. I would recommend you take it because if we go to court, you have the drugs on you. You might just lose. You might get 15 years. They got to offer you that. Whether or not you take it is up to you, but a lot of times, if you taking a gamble between however long the trial is going to take in Rikers, plus the time you might spend afterwards, and someone says, well, we can let you out of here in less time if you just say you did it, then the option seems really good to get out of prison and jail sooner, right? So they can't strike the deal without you accepting it, but they can suggest you take the deal. So, again, anecdotally, I think like all the cases don't take the deals, make a conviction, but that's a different conversation. Any other questions about the executive branches? I just want to talk about the city council and then we can wrap it up real quick. No? Cool, perfect. Sorry, I know it's a little bit slow. I appreciate y'all giving feedback though. So the city council, right, is the legislative body of New York City. This is who makes the laws, who passes the laws on the local level. They pass the budget, they vote out all the things. So when we talked about the other branches, the state assembly, the state assembly, Congress, all of that, the people who write laws, this is who writes the laws for the city. It's not 2 houses, it's just 51 members. That's it right here. So one from each council district, and they serve 2-year terms again, one legislative session. And they get to have oversight powers over the city agencies. They get to decide how land is used. They get to decide who has the they have the ability to decide what the budget is, which agencies get more or less funded. I'm definitely not touching this one because I'm going to say something that loses my job. But that being said, so you have city council members, and if you're in this district, if you're in Flatbush, there's at least these 3 representatives that you can contact for representation that cover different parts of Flatbush. So the first who represents this address specifically, if you're in this area, is Councilmember Rena Joseph for District 40, Councilmember Darlene Neely for District 41, and then it jumps to District 45 for Councilmember Farrah Lewis. So all of these people in and around Flatbush are who are here to advocate for Flatbush across New York City. So what's important in Flatbush, who needs to, what resources, what representation y'all need, comes from these people right here. And this is where you would go to lobby to have these conversations. Any questions about the council? Because I know I went kind of quick on it. By all means. So, right, this is a lot of voting, but there's ways to get involved beyond voting. And I'm gonna wrap it up real quick because I know I'm a little bit over on time. I got you right now. So this whole conversation, right, is about civic engagement. Who's heard the term civic engagement before today? Well, yes, the Civic Engagement Commission. Shout out to you. Yes. But civic engagement, a lot of times when we have these conversations, right, it falls in on voting. And then, inevitably, when things don't happen after you vote someone in office and things don't change, then you start asking yourself, well, why should I vote? Why should I do this? Voting doesn't change anything. Voting is not kind of effective. This is why I asked these questions at the beginning, right? Civic engagement, though, is much more than voting. So I'm gonna just give you guys some examples, right? One aspect of civic engagement, research and monitoring current events. Just knowing what's going on in your community is important towards civic engagement. You don't know what to advocate for, you don't know what to say if you're not paying attention to what's going on. And if you see what's going on and you're not taking that extra step to look it up, to understand it yourself and get the information yourself, then you're at a disadvantage, right? Because you have to know what things are before you participate in them, before you know where you stand on. Also, social media, digital organizing. Who here on social media? Got a Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, anything, right there. I know I got them, probably everybody in the room got them, right? So that's another thing. It's 2022, y'all. Y'all don't even gotta leave your crib to pass information. Y'all can just go, share a tweet, like a tweet, do whatever. Make a quick TikTok talking about, I don't know, like go vote, you know, Cardi B be on TikTok doing all the things. Like, come on, hell, it's easy. But this aspect of digital organizing is how you reach people all across the way. And it's more than just voting, but again, you're spreading information, and that's one of the most important parts. Because a lot of times, people will get involved if they know what they're getting involved in. So this is where we can be resources for each other. Also, creating, completing surveys. So I know at least in this room, there's at least 2 surveys right now. There's the CLSJ survey, and then there's the East Flatbush Community Partnership survey going around. And all of these are the same goal, right? We want to know what the issues are in our community. We want to know whether or not you're being well represented, whether or not your needs are being met, how we can help be of better service, right? This is an important part because if we don't have the information as advocates, then we don't know where to properly go to make our voices heard, to amplify your voices, and to do that work. Also, the work itself, right? Acts of service, volunteering, mutual aid. So the two are different. Feel free if I got a question, I'll explain it. But acts of service, really going in your community, making sure you're providing the needs of your community. Because a lot of times, the elected officials can't solve the problem, not by themselves. They could vote on the issue, they could pass a law, they could do something that may come out in the future. But the power is in the hands of the people, right? If y'all see somebody in the subway station and they're like, man, listen, I haven't eaten in 3 days. I need food, like I need something to eat. Can you help me? Y'all not about to be like, call your counselor. That's not the way it works. Give the man some food. Like, that's an act of service. But what that is meeting a need of the community. That's, again, civic engagement. Donating, registering voters, getting people involved, protesting, boycotting, petitioning, doing all of this to highlight issues, amplify issues, and make sure that it's being met and reached by the whole community. Very important. Regular contact with your elected representatives. So all the people I put on the screen, even if you don't got a problem, call them up and be like, hey, listen, you know, I think this would be good for the future. Maybe you should work on this. This is something that helps. But constantly being in contact. Make sure they know you so that when you call, they pick up the phone. Because when it's important, then you have the aim. Then you have the ability to build power for your community, to be an advocate and speak on behalf of your community. Also, shout out Community Board 17. Join your community board, right? You see, we got members right here. First of all, how old you gotta be to join the community board? And not y'all. Oh, I hear y'all guess. How old you gotta be to join the community board? 16. Exactly. You gotta be 16 years old, and you're talking policy. So anybody can get on the board. All you gotta do is go through a series of interviews, be appointed, and then you sit on a board that decides policy dealing with transportation, public safety, community development, all of these things, and you get to be a voice director. As someone who's 16 years old can do this, so everybody in this room is eligible to go out and get involved and have an actual role in creating policy in their communities. Also beyond that, go ahead.
That's a good question. Does the community board impact the school district? Or is that something, are those two things?
I'll refer to that. Community Board 17. My fault. Just a question about community boards as they relate to schooling, like school districts.
Do you have an impact on the school district, or is that something separate from your office?
We do, because we have committee that is taking care of that. The chair just come in and we provide a lot of information about that.
See, we love to see it. But that's what's important about conversations like this. This isn't on here, but this is something as well. Getting involved with organizations and joining up. Because as y'all see, right, I don't have all the answers. I got some answers, I know some things. But get involved, know the people who have the answers and who to contact so that you can get the information you need. Also, run for office. Now, this is where I'm gonna step in because I'm 100% for this book. If y'all think voting don't work, if you think change don't happen, if you think any of that is the case, you're right. Run for office. Be that change. Get involved. It don't take nothing. You know, I think, actually I looked it up and I said it on the conversation, I was wrong. You do need 10 years of law experience to sit on the state Supreme Court. That was my fault because I said that in a meeting last week. I was wrong. I had to do some research. But to sit on the Supreme Court, right, of the United States of America, you actually don't need a law. To be an elected representative, I don't know how many of y'all follow it, right? In Congress, the youngest representative currently in Congress just got elected last week, same age as me, 25 years old, Maxwell Frost, said, y'all don't do your jobs, this seat is open, I'm running. Stop me if you can, and won. Now he's a representative in Congress, right? That's all it takes. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right, up in Queens. She was a bartender, y'all. She had a little degree, like, from college and everything, but she was a bartender. She said, we have this representative who's not doing his job. He's been in office since I was a kid. I'm running for office. Nothing's been changing. She ran for office and won. And now she's one of the most powerful voices in the country. All across the board. And it's no educational, just age requirements. Go ahead.
So could you talk a little bit more about the judges that were just elected, like, in terms of experience? Because I know you had talked about that on the meeting.
So, in terms of experience, all of the judges that are on here, so it was a little bit different. There was 12 judge seats open. I think it was 12 across the state, and it said select like 7 of them on the paper. There was, all of that was predetermined. All the people who were elected had experience. You do need, that's what I was just clarifying, though, you do need legal experience. You need 10 years legal experience to do that. So that was a little different. I apologize, but I'll definitely get that involved. But every other office, right, you don't need, we got a person who just got reelected to Congress that was elected in 2021 who got their GED in 2020. That's the requirement, though. All you gotta do is run and get involved. But I don't want to take up too much time saying that. And then also build community. The people that are here, your neighbors, talk to them. Understand their needs, how you can help them and be supportive. That's the most important thing. So these are all ways to get involved beyond voting, right? That makes your vote more impactful. So once you cast that ballot, now you've done all of these things, you can go tell your elected official, listen, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. You got 2 years, it's a 2-year term. If in 2 years you haven't done X, Y, Z, I did my research. I got a whole following on social media. This many of my community members said it's a problem too. Man, we get in the field doing this work. You don't do nothing. We got money behind us. You know what? I'm gonna register some voters and run against you. Now you got a challenge. You want to act now, right? That's how this game works. It is not just voting and saying y'all need to do for us. We gotta do for ourselves. Because nobody is coming through to save us. It's gotta be the power of the people, right? You hear this all the time, but it's a real thing. It's gotta be the people who do the work and build this power, build our futures, right? Last thing I promise is wrapping up, just a quick case study, right? So, show of hands who voted, because now I'm gonna ask, right? Who voted in the last election? Again, y'all won't offend me if you say no. So, if you voted, who flipped the ballot over and voted for the ballot proposals? There we go, that's what I like to see. So, we're gonna talk real quick just about this process of civic engagement beyond voting. So, right, you remember 2020, right? What was going on in March of 2020? Exactly, the pandemic. We had lockdowns. Who remembers the video of people up in the Bronx getting slammed on their neck for not wearing masks and doing all of that, right? So that's going on, right? That's March 2020. New York City lockdown, pandemic, all the laws were disproportionately enforced, right? Then April, May, we had the video of Ahmaud Arbery went viral, him getting killed in Georgia. We heard about Breonna Taylor being killed in her sleep. We saw George Floyd get murdered, right? And instantly, New Yorkers do what we do. We stood up and fought back. We was in the streets marching, yelling, screaming, chanting, all of that. From June all the way through the next year, some people still outside today. And this is all in response to racial injustice, police brutality, all of that, right? And we're calling for change, demanding change, organizing, putting candidates up, doing all of the things and saying, nah, enough is enough, we demand change now. Mayor de Blasio at the time heard the calls. He did 3 things. One of them, he painted Black Lives Matter in the street, which was beautiful. Didn't do nothing to change racial injustice. The next thing was, he made Juneteenth a holiday. Before the country did, the city made Juneteenth a holiday. Great, again, love a day off, not solving things. The thing that he did that does solve some things, that helps to solve some things, in March 2021, he created the Racial Justice Commission in direct response. Little side note, I'm a part of a different organization outside of here. We had a campaign in February 2021 calling for the resignation of the police commissioner. We was outside Mayor de Blasio's house every night for about a month straight, screaming at Gracie Mansion. Every night, that man got no sleep. The next month, he made this commission. What this commission did, right, they were charged with identifying and rooting out structural racism in city government. So the ways that city government allows racism to come in and affect Black and brown communities, right? So this commission, 11 people, side plug, my boss was one of them, she was very cool, she did her work. They came together, they came up with these 3 ballot proposals, right? The first of which was to add a statement of values to guide government. So, right, you know how we have a constitution, in the city we have a state charter. Y'all know how the Constitution starts off with, we the people, in order to form all that, yada, 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 right? The city charter didn't have that, ain't got none of that. They didn't have a preamble, they didn't have no we the people guiding statement. So they said, well, A, we need one, and in that statement, it needs to say New York works for a just and equitable future for everyone. This guides what government does after that. And it says you gotta go back and address the past harms in the history of the city, right? So I'm saying all this just to give y'all some background, but that's in the preamble to guide government. That was the first proposal. The next one was to create a racial equity plan, commission, and office. What this does is make every city agency and the city itself create a plan for how they're gonna make the city more equitable racially, right? How they're gonna address racial inequity. And every agency has to do this. The NYPD, all of them, they have to do this. And then they have a commission to make sure that ongoing, in perpetuity, forever, that there's a commission making sure the city is working towards racial equity. The last one is to implement a true cost of living. It said it only costs $29,000 to feed and raise a family of 4 in New York City, $29,000 a year. That's what the number was. They put a proposal up that said, yeah, we're not doing that. We need to pass it and measure the real number, how much it really costs. And that number determines federal programs, or not federal programs, how money is spent on the city, where resources go, who qualifies for what resources, right? All of these things are 3 ballot proposals. So on election day, you flipped your ballot over, thank you, because you voted for it largely. New York City, the first one, the amendments go into effect January 23. To give y'all context, right? Let me see, let me pull this up. The first ballot proposal passed with 72% of the vote. 72% of the people came out and said, absolutely, we want to add a preamble. 70% said, yeah, we want to address racial equity. 1% said to heck with that $29,000 a year. You gotta measure the real number. That's all because starting at the top, all the way back here in 2020, people were fed up. People said, this is not what we want, this is not what our city represents, we need change now. So we got in the streets, we protested, we organized, we did the things as a community. Government had to respond. Now, once government responded, that's when we gotta start talking to the commissioners, the people making decisions, and they had hearings, they did research, they did all of the things, right? They came up with these 3 proposals. Then it came back to us again. Are we gonna vote for it, yes or no, to approve it? And boom, we voted yes, largely voted yes. And so now, starting in 2023, the number will be met, the true cost of living is going to be measured. It's going to determine how money is spent across the city, who qualifies. Racial equity is going to be a thing. Everybody in this room, when they make the commission, when they make the commission, y'all can apply in perpetuity. It's a paid position, an actual job, sitting on the commission, making sure that this city continues to work towards racial equity. Everybody in this group can qualify as long as we recommend you have some experience advocating and all of that. But all that takes is an appointment from, I believe, the public advocate when that comes, if I'm not mistaken. But moving forward, we're going to see how that plays out in January. But this is all directly tied to people organizing, demanding change, having those demands met, and then voting to solidify it. And now it's on us to continue. So for this whole conversation, if y'all take nothing else away, take away the fact that it's possible. We just did it. We've done it a few times. Got you. I said, my fault, you didn't hear me. I said, if there is one thing to take away from this conversation, it is that change is possible. Voting isn't the only way. There's multiple ways to do it. But change is possible because we just did it. And all it takes is people coming together, organizing, making their voices heard for their community, and then showing up. That's it. So that being said, if y'all got any questions, feel free to throw them out real quick, but we're gonna wrap up with that. And thank y'all so much. I appreciate y'all for having me. Thank you for the interaction. Put up how many pins you want if you want a pin, so I can get you your pins. I got you. Got you. All right, thank you so much. That being said, we're gonna pass it over. Oh. So, got you. So, I'll hold on for 1 second while we wait for our next speaker to come on up. But if there's any questions about anything I mentioned, feel free to reach out. If you guys want to get involved with my organization, the work that we do, any of the organizations here, I encourage y'all step up, get some information. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Rebecca to close us out for tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaiah. That was amazing. How you guys doing tonight? Good? Great. So I just wanted to come up and say thank you so much. I am Rebecca Holmes, Director of the East Company Partnership. We appreciate you for being here. Who was here last month? I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you were here last month. Okay, we have some new kids up there. Okay. So I'm curious to know if you guys can just share one takeaway from something that Isaiah mentioned today. Either something that you learned or something that was reinforced. So if I can just get maybe 2 people just to share something, go ahead.
If you're not satisfied with what's going on in your community, speak up and take action.
Thank you. So he said if you're not satisfied with what's going on in your community, speak up and take action. Yes. What's your takeaway? Beyond just voting, very good. So different ways to engage civically beyond voting. That's maybe what you want to share takeaway from Isaiah's talk. Well, I'll just tell you, I was very excited because prior to this, I don't think I would have known as many elected officials that I did get. Right? So I was just like a person to know. So at this time, at this time, we have our program services that are here representing, and they're going to come up and share some information about what they offer. Okay? So you guys can come on up. Thank you.
Hi everybody, with the Civic Engagement Commission. And our job as an agency is to promote inclusive civic participation for all New Yorkers. So I'm here with my colleague Evie as well, so come visit us at this table. One of our initiatives is called People's Money. It's an initiative called Participatory Budgeting, where we get to decide as a public how to spend a portion of the city's budget. So currently we have $5 million of the mayor's expense fund. So we can use that money to purchase, to suggest ideas for services, for events, and for programs that we want to see in our communities. So we get to decide how to spend $5 million on more after-school programs, on more mental health services, more senior services. So think about your community, your neighbors, your family. Think about your schools, your parks, your libraries, any public spaces, any idea you might have. We're still collecting ideas now through Friday, so there's a deadline. You can visit our website, participate.nyc.gov, and we'll be around. So if you have any questions, please come see us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm skipping the line. Please forgive me if you knew what I did for a living, you would say, shame on you. But I do have a couple of other community events that I need to get to. My name is Roger Daly, known to most as Rudy. Roger. I am the chair of Community Board 17, which is across the street. Essentially, so just to, not to give you a long thing about community boards, just to let everybody know, in New York City, once you live in New York City, you live in a community board, right? And there are reasons to join a community board. So my community board, where I am chair, there are 50 members that is appointed either by the city council or by the borough president, depending on what borough you're in. And so that's, the community board is a complaint bureau. So whatever you want to complain about, you'll find an agency that goes through anywhere in New York City for that. Very quickly, our chair of Parks and Beautification, Ms. Burla Antoine, is hanging out there. I know this, so a few of our other chairs are here earlier as well. If you have any questions at all, somebody had asked a question about education. What was the question? I'm sorry. So we don't play a part in schools' admissions, but we play a part in school relationships. Alright, so if you're a child, so like for my community board, we have 5 different school districts that we're a part of. So we will meet with different principals, whatever the case is, the school, if they have a concern. Again, we're a complaint bureau. So if your school has a concern, you speak to us, and our education chair actually just left. So deal with that. And I was in the former assistant principal as well down the street of Erasmus. So I do have some background in education as well. So that's what I was saying. If you know what my job is, you know I'm going to skip the line. So that's where it comes in for your question. But the community board, we serve as an agency that is a city agency that facilitates with others as well, right? But before I forget, I also want to shout out my mom, right? Pastor Llewellyn, Minister Llewellyn, so I make sure I shout out my mom, you know, out there as well. So that's what we do. So if you have any questions, Chair Antoine will be able to answer them, forward them. Oh, one more thing. If you live in Brooklyn, the applications to join the community board is coming out, should have come out today. That means between now and February, you can apply to the board. And my board, if you live in 17, we need people. Right? So I'm just hint. So in order to be a member of the board, you have to basically hit the following one of each of these criteria. Right? 1, live in the community, work in the community, be an active member in the community for whatever, and have a significant, or business in the community have a significant interest. So if you have one of those, right now, they're looking to just apply to the board. Right, it's in a 2-year term. I think I'm overusing my time, but hopefully I answered that community board question. And by the way, just for the record, under social justice, hope you know Harold Miller. You do know Harold Miller? Yes, sir. Yes. So a very good friend of mine. We started out together. So this organizing, by the way, is very important. So if you're not part of it, get involved. Grassroots organization, very important. This is how you get things done. Okay, so just make sure. I mean, we started out with $746 million for schools, so you can get it done. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. If there are any questions, please do feel free to write it down. My email address is also my title, CB17 chairperson @gmail.com. So Community Board 17, CB17 chairperson @gmail.com. Thank you so much. God bless.
Hello guys. Okay. So my name is Miguel West. I'm from the Mayor Office of Immigrant Affairs, and I'm from the Community Service Representative at the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. We're here tonight just to share with you guys about the program and service we have available in the city for you guys. And with me, I have my colleague. Just want to tell everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Yahaya. I'm currently a fellow working in lawyer. I'm also an intern from American City Corp.
Thank you. Yeah, so just quickly about the resources we have available. This is our people. What we provided is we have services such as ID and which I'd like to talk about. We all need it. And we have other services like, actually we don't, let me just clarify that, we connect you guys with those services. So it's not us providing the services, but any questions, before questions we have, we want to see everybody, if you're looking to fill out citizenship applications, all that, so we do connect with the agency that works with the city that can provide you with assistance. If you guys, whenever you feel free to go there and get more information, we will provide you more information, and we have these resources there so we can get and share with other things in your house. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia. I'm a community liaison for Canva Place. You probably heard of Canva. It's one of the larger nonprofit social services organizations in the city. We have all sorts of programs, youth programs, legal aid, affordable housing. But I'm here about the home-based program, which is a homelessness prevention program. So we work with people who are going through a housing crisis, who are being evicted, who are behind on their rent and utilities, to try to be able to stay in their homes. Yeah, that's what we do. We cover most of Brooklyn and also Staten Island. But if you're from, like East New York or some other neighborhoods or another borough, there's a different home-based provider for your area. Yeah, we have an outreach team, we have mobile units, so you might see us around the city at different events. And feel free to come by if you have questions about housing issues or about our program. And yeah, we love to collaborate with other community organizations as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thais Ellen Bob, and I am the Community Liaison, Community Coordinator for the Department of Education through District 79, Adult Education Sector. So it's the DOE, but our students are 21 and over. We even had a student at 86 years old that came to our school for computer literacy classes. Okay, we're located in the heart of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Adult Learning Center is at 475 Millstreet Avenue, but I also cover a portion of East Flatbush, Brooklyn, the whole borough of Canarsie, and also a portion of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. adult education classes for the community, GED classes, ESL classes for immigrants that need to learn English, computer literacy classes, nursing assistant classes, medical assistant classes, patient care technician classes, A+ certification classes, Network Plus classes. These classes are free. Free, free, free. I am a proud graduate of the Brooklyn Adult Learning Center. I always like to show a little bit of testimony about myself. I came to that school with no high school diploma. I took a GED class. This is in the 90s. I'm aging myself a little bit. I took a GED class. I took a computer literacy class. And back then, you had to know how to type if you wanted to work in an office. So I took a typing class. I graduated. I went on to college. And now I work for the school that first gave me my chance. So I'm a living testimony that the program does work. If you know any immigrant that does not know the English language, you can send them to the Brooklyn Adult Learning Center. If you know a senior citizen that's tired of begging their grandchildren to help them, and they need a computer literacy class, you can direct them to the Brooklyn Adult Learning Center. If you know someone that want to work in the medical field, you can direct them to the Brooklyn Adult Learning Center. These classes are free. We're located at 475 North Street Avenue, also classes at South Shore High School and IS Winthrop, Beacon Campus. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
So, my fault. I know y'all heard enough of me, so I'm gonna be real quick. Just realized I forgot to give my contact information and just a quick access to some resources. Once again, I appreciate all of y'all having been listening and enjoying the conversation. Y'all doing the game? Got you. But yeah, if y'all want to get in touch or get involved with the Our Future, Our Vote campaign, get in touch with CLSJ and going forward. You can reach me at CHEL, or if you're easy enough, you can go grab one of these brochures off the table in the back. It explains our campaign, the work that we do, resources that we have to help you guys get educated. And then on the back end, we have access to all of our social media handles, all of that information as well. So if y'all ever want to get in touch, if you ever want to learn more, ask a question, feel free. I love helping out and doing the work. And yeah, feel free to grab one and come talk to me at the end of this. Thank y'all so much and have a great rest of your night. I appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody, for sitting here with us. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for giving us your attention. Thank you for the resources that we have for you, all the snacks that we have. Thank you. I'm going to have to make sure everybody has a great night and a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.
I've got some gift cards to give away.